I made a comment on a video by So, who was talking about how she doesn't date Korean men, and by that she means Korean American men. And the comment was that I have observed that the culture is different among the Korean American diaspora from the culture that exists in Korea itself. She asked me to make a response video talking more about this with my wife. She really doesn't like to do this kind of thing, so I'm just going to speak from my own observation. And I want to emphasize that I don't have, a lot of experience like understanding relationship dynamics in the two countries, but I've observed, my relatives, that is my wife's relatives, and I've observed friends of mine who live here who are Korean American. Because my experience is limited, I'm just going to talk about things that I have really observed myself, and my wife has also observed. And that is that, and this is pretty much a truism for all immigrant communities, the culture that your parents or grandparents or whoever were the initial immigrants bring with them is a snapshot of the culture from the time they left. So the main observation I would make, it's not that Korea is somehow not patriarchal anymore. It still is, but it's just the way in which it has evolved there. It's quite different at this point from what it was when most of the Korean Americans I know when their parents came. It's just changed, let's say. So the place where I've noticed this the most is attitudes about how to raise children, which isn't necessarily directly relevant to relationships, but I think it may be instructive. For example, Korean Americans I've seen have often had a lot of conflicts with their parents. And I would say some of the conflicts are due to the fact that their parents are expressing a version of Korean culture which is from the past. They tend to be a little bit harsher, a little bit more, you know, old school disciplinarian. My observations of Korean families that we know in Korea itself is that the relationships between parents and children are not quite the same. They're not as fraught. So one of my wife's favorite shows is a show where parents get advice from child psychologists on how to deal with difficult children. And I think shows like that actually have changed the culture of parenting to some extent. It's not completely changed. Korean parents are still strict in Korea, but it's evolved. Feminism is an idea that people have heard about. It's not widely accepted there, but at least it's something that people are working with as an idea. It's even had a backlash there. But even the backlash itself, I think, is evidence that even though the ideas are not accepted by everyone, they're at least out there. And it's a struggle, right? It's a conversation that is ongoing in Korea itself. The basic idea that I wanted to express, though, is simply that when you're in a culture, the culture tends to have a conversation with itself over time, and that causes the culture to evolve. And people who are immigrants are cut off from that largely. They're not embedded in it anymore, and so their views tend to get somewhat stuck wherever they were when they left the country. This doesn't mean that many of the same problems don't exist in Korea that exist, let's say, in the diaspora, but it is a different flavor. And I just thought that was interesting to observe.